Welcome to Part 12C. Platform lovers in 1990 were also well catered for on the PC Engine, with a brilliant PC Gengin or PC Kid, also known as Bonk in the US. This Charlie Brown-like caveman would headbang and gnaw his way through the prehistoric levels. The game was great fun, with the happy, bouncy music and bright visuals that made you smile as you played through the game. The game would become an unofficial mascot for the machine, with 2 follow-up games being released, starring our Charlie Brown prehistoric forefather. There was Bonk's Revenge and Bonk's 3, Bonk's Big Adventure, which even had a co-op 2-player mode. They even did a spin-off shoot-'em-up game called Air Zonk, which was a futuristic version of Bonk. Of course, Hudson Soft would also roll out their other game character, Bomberman, for the machine, with 3 classic versions for the machine being released. The best of these was the last instalment, Bomberman 94, which in my mind is the second best Bomberman game after the Saturn version, but I'll get onto that later on. The machine wasn't all about Hudson games either. There was a wide range of great games to enjoy. Notable games unique to the system was Batman, a Pac-Man-like maze collect-em-up that was great fun to play, Bloody Wolf, a great take of the classic Ikari Warriors and Commando games, Boxy Boy. This I absolutely love, and it's the best version of the box-pushing puzzler out there that will make you pull your hair out as you work out the fiendish levels to the insanely catchy music that stays in your head forever. Also released was Parasol Stars, the forgotten chapter in the Bubble Bubble saga that would be first released only on the PC Engine. In the game, you play Bub and Bob in their human form, as they use their magic parasols to rescue planets by taking out all the cute beasties. Like in Rainbow Islands, the planets are all themed and with their own array of nasties to thwart. Other games was Gamola Speed, a really unique game where you played a caterpillar that must make rings around food to devour it. Another original game released for the machine was a bizarre Geisha Boy or Photo Boy, where you had to go around paparazzi snapping the best shot of all the mania going on around you. You only have a limited number of photos that you can take when you film, and so you have to be careful with what shots you're going to take of all the mania going on around you. So you have to be careful of what photos you take. At the end of each level you get ratings from the newspaper editor on the photos you take, giving you points for the particularly good ones. Konami would also release one of the best games in the Castlevania series called Dracula X, Rondo of Blood. In the game you play Richter Belmont as you go on a slaying spree to give Dracula another good whipping. Despite all these console upstarts nipping at Nintendo's toes, it was still the NES that was the daddy when it came to popularity, and unsurprisingly, therefore, the NES would have a library of games that its contenders could only dream of. To start with, Nintendo had the greatest game designers, such as Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, who would be so instrumental in continuing the saga of the Mario and Zelda games. In 1986, Mario 2 would be released in Japan on the Famicom Disk System. This was essentially the same game as Super Mario Bros., but with more levels, and designed to be much more of a challenge. In the West, they never released this game, as it was felt that gamers would feel cheated having to pay for a new cartridge for essentially the same game as the first. So for this version of the game, Westerners would have to wait until the All-Stars SNES cartridge back catalogue would be released, which had Super Mario Bros. 2 that was released on Japan, known as The Lost Levels. Instead, in the West, we would have to wait until 1988, when we would get the West version of Super Mario Bros. 2. This game was good, but quite a departure from the first game, with it allowing you to choose to play one of 4 characters. You could play Mario, Luigi, Toad or Princess. Each would have their own abilities, such as Luigi being better at jumping higher, and had you hurl vegetables at enemies to defeat them as you made your way through the level. In this game, jumping on enemies would actually kill you, with Mario seemingly forgetting how to do jump attacks in this game. The reason why this game was so different was because it really wasn't a Mario game at all, but a Japanese game called Yumi Kojo Doki Doki Panic, which was a game designed by Miyamoto for the Fujitsu television channel and their cartoon family called Ume Kojo Festival. They took this game and altered all the artwork to make it a Mario game, but also adding some extra elements such as adding a run button function. Japan wouldn't see this version of the game until 1992, when it was released under the title Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. In 1988 in Japan, it would also be the year of Mario's greatest NES installment, called Super Mario Bros. 3. It returned to the good old formula of jumping on foes and taking the idea and running with it to make an intricate world for you to explore. So many new ideas were added to this, from the map allowing multiple paths through the levels, to great neat ideas thrown into this game. Power-ups such as the flying raccoon suit that Mario could wear. This game really did have so many new ideas in it that an average developer wouldn't have been able to come up with in his entire lifetime. The US wouldn't see this game until 1990, and by that time the whole country would be in a frenzy for this game like never before. This was helped by an intense advertising campaign that you're seeing now. Also released was the film called The Wizard, which was really like one big Nintendo advert and was almost a retelling of the Who's Pinball Wizard styled film, but with video games instead of pinball. The film wasn't great, but it was a guaranteed success because it would have the first gameplay footage of the new Mario game in the big tournament finale of the film. American kids were so desperate to see. In Europe, however, we would have to wait another full year before we got to enjoy the game. But for all, it was worth the wait, with many considering this to be the best Mario game of all time, if not the best game of all time, full stop. Another Shigeru classic was released on the NES, called Zelda 2 The Adventures of Link, which was released in 1987 in Japan. This followed on from the first game and had you play Link again as he must rescue the Princess Zelda, who has fallen asleep under a spell, and is up to Link to awaken her by finding the Triforce of Courage. The game was a total departure from the original offering, having the world as a side-scrolling adventure, with only an overhead map to move from place to place. The game has often been looked at unkindly by fans of the series with its tough difficulty and the fact that it's such a departure from all the other games. But this is still a fun game to play, and the RPG elements that it brought to the table were a welcome addition as well. But Nintendo wasn't all about Nintendo game characters, and they would help continue to build other video game heroes for other companies. Konami in 1987 released Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. This had you play Simon Belmont, who discovers that before he killed Dracula in the first game, Dracula had cursed him and he will die. Don't you just hate that when that happens? Not wanting to pop his clogs, Simon decides to go on a quest to bring Dracula back to life by collecting all his body parts to release the curse and then kill him again. The game was a total departure of the first game, being much more of an RPG exploration than the all-out platform original. Much better in 1989 was Castlevania 3, called Dracula's Curse. This was actually a prequel that had you play Trevor Belmont, who was an ancestor of Simon. The game, thankfully, was a much-needed return back to its gaming roots, dropping the RPG elements of the second game to a much more action-orientated game of the original. Thanks for listening to Part C, and please go on to Part D. This is the final part, I promise, and it will cover some final games on the Nintendo and other hopeful consoles released in Europe.